Welcome to National Resource and Training Services Private Investigation Seminars. Today's topic is divorce and custody. My name is John Cook and I'll be your presenter. Advance to the next slide. Why hire an investigator? It's very important in this profession that we sell ourselves, whether it's with the attorneys that we work for or clients off the street. The main thing we need them to know is that we have expertise in this area. We're professionals. We've received training in this area. We also have interviewing skills, which can be important to our clients. Also, the fact that we have been to court. We know our way around a courtroom. Also, there's a danger factor that we need to explain to our clients. Often when a client or even an attorney feels like that it may be a good idea for them to do surveillance themselves, this is never a good thing, especially in divorce and custody cases. It's our place to explain that to the client and educate the client that there is a danger factor there, that they should not be put at risk. Also, there's legal issues. Like I said before, we're licensed to do this job. Some individuals attempting to do the same things that a licensed private investigator does could be putting themselves in the place to face harassment charges. Not the case with a professional licensed private investigator. Advance to the next slide. Also, we're well versed in the technology that's available. We also understand and work within the law. Also, there's recognition. Most of us have been working in the same area or the same town for quite a while, and we've become known to the local attorneys and, more important, to the judges. So when we enter the court with our clients, we do have some recognition and credibility. Also, the fact that we are experienced at evidence gathering. We know how to gather evidence. We know what the chain of custody involves. Also, we know the amount of time that's going to be required. This is another selling point for you as an investigator to use with your client, especially if you have a client that's kind of teetering on the thought of doing some of the investigation themselves. When you explain to them that we are committing our time and effort to the case, whereas they have jobs, they have families, they have other things to be concerned with, the amount of time required to do a proper investigation is simply something they're not going to be able to do. These are all good selling points when speaking to attorneys or people off the street that are potential new clients. Advance to the next slide. Let's talk about the contract for a moment. First of all, as a private investigator and as a professional, you need to always use a contract with your client, especially in divorce and custody cases. In this contract, you want to be specific on what you're doing. In other words, what is the job? If a client's hiring you to do surveillance on a Tuesday afternoon from 5 to 9 p.m. and they are specific about that, then that needs to be in your contract. If the contract simply states that you're, especially on a divorce case, that you're attempting to find out whether or not the spouse is having an extramarital affair, then you need to specify that in the contract. Also, educate your client. The best time to do this is when you're doing the contract. Make sure your client realizes what the costs are, what the potential cost could be. Make sure you get a proper retainer and explain to your client how that retainer is going to be used. Get all the details before accepting a case. The more details you get up front, the better equipped you're going to be to do a proper case and be successful in this case. Also, find out who your client's attorney is and the other party's attorney. This is very important to avoid any type of conflict of interest. Has another investigator been used? This is a very important question, and a lot of investigators fail to ask this. A lot of times a client will come to you or an attorney will come to you and they have used an investigator before you. Well, there's got to be a reason that they dropped that investigator and have come to you now. It'd be a good idea to know what the problems were with the prior investigator. Also, this could give you a heads up on whether or not you're dealing with a client that has unreasonable expectations, which may give you cause not to accept the case in the first place. Advance to the next slide. Also, in dealing with the contract, make sure to explain all costs up front. Explain your retainer and how that's going to be applied toward the case. Explain what your mileage is. Explain that there are certain items that you are going to bill to the client as expenses. Is there a conflict? Do you have a conflict with either of the parties or either of the parties' attorneys? Get a proper retainer. Make sure and take everything into consideration when you give your client the amount that the retainer is going to be. You shouldn't have a minimum retainer for all cases. If you're taking a divorce or custody case that's going to be worked outside your county and it's going to involve a little more time and more travel, then you're going to need more of a retainer. Base your retainer on what you think it's going to take to give you a good chance to be successful at this case. You need enough time to have a better chance of success. Advance to the next slide. When working child custody cases, ask yourself, what can an investigator do? More so, inform and educate your client and the attorneys of what an investigator can do, what you can do. First of all, you can protect a child or children from danger or abuse. You can report on the living environment, the place where the children are living. What is it like inside? What is it like outside the house? Report on improper conduct. Are there any of the parties involved? Do they have records? Do they have criminal records? Are they acting improper outside the marriage? Also, you can look for signs of alcohol and or drug abuse. Advance to the next slide. Also, a professional investigator can document the amount of time spent with the child. A lot of times in custody cases, there's already been specific visitation agreements worked out through the court. It's important sometimes during an investigation to document how much time is the person actually spending with the children, especially if it's a situation where they're getting visitation on the weekends, normally from Friday afternoon through Sunday afternoon. At these times when they do have the children, are they the primary caregivers, or are they just leaving the children with someone else and spending their time out at the clubs or doing other activities? What kind of time and what is the quality of time that are being spent with the children? Document any reckless behavior. If they're small children, you'll be surprised how important it can be just to get a video of them being put in the vehicle without using proper child safety seats or restraint devices. Are they being placed in any dangerous situations? Check criminal records. That's always the first thing you want to do, is run a records check on the people that are involved. Also check civil records. This will give you a good indication if there are a lot of calls for service at this particular house or apartment, especially for drunk and disorderly or just general complaints that might show a pattern of behavior. Advance to the next slide. Also, as an investigator, you can interview witnesses. You can provide peace of mind to the client. A lot of times, clients are not necessarily hoping or wishing that their children are in danger or being put in bad situations. They just simply need to know what the situation is. especially when you're dealing with grandparents. So a lot of times we can provide peace of mind for these clients. We can also help provide documentation of compliance by the client. In other words, are the parties complying with the court orders as far as visitation, as far as school attendance, parent meetings, anything that has been laid out or specified in that custody agreement by the court. It's very important sometimes just to provide documentation that the parties are or are not complying with the orders of the court. Advance to the next slide. Here are some tips that you can give your client. Have the child's best interests at heart. Explain to your client that the thing that's going to do them the most good is to have the child's best interests at heart and not be using the child as a pawn in a custody case, simply as a way of getting back at the other party. And you can tell by talking to the client up front and during your initial conversations whether they have the child's best interests at heart or not. Advise your client to keep a journal. This includes their compliance with court orders, especially prior to the court issuing or granting custody. It's very important that they keep a journal of everything they do, all contact with the other party, anything of importance. These journals are presentable in court. And do not attempt to adversely affect the child's relationship with the other parent or guardian. Don't be bad-mouthing or demeaning the other person in front of the child. That is not a good way to go. Advance to the next slide. More tips for your client. Do not degrade the other parent or connected persons in front of the child. Do not violate terms of temporary custody or your visitations. Do not expose the child to unsafe conditions. Advance to the next slide. Also advise your client to not be involved in another improper relationship, especially during the time when court proceedings are going on and up until the point where their divorce or custody situation has been settled. Spend time with your children. The more time you spend with your children, the better you're going to be. Keep all appointed meetings and schedules. If the court has set a meeting or scheduled parenting classes, make sure and meet these. Make sure and be on time. Do not discuss or involve the child with the divorce details. And also want custody for the right reasons. Advance to the next slide. When dealing with divorce cases, advise your clients and their attorneys of what you can do. You can document improper marital conduct. You can do this by doing surveillance, finding out whether the party is acting in any improper way. Also, this day and time, you can find a lot of information on the social networks like Facebook and MySpace. Document drug or alcohol abuse. Sometimes this can be done simply by doing some surveillance and following the subject to a bar or a tavern or a club and documenting the amount of alcohol use during that particular day or night. Also, if there's any drug activity that you noticed. Document criminal activity. Do this by running background checks on the parties. Document spousal abuse or reports of spousal abuse. Interview witnesses. This is something that you generally want to wait to toward the end of your case. Especially wait till after surveillance, those type things have been done, because once you start interviewing witnesses, the cat's pretty much out of the bag that this is being investigated. And then finally, you're experienced and ready and available to testify in court. Advance to the next slide. Also, there's some other things that you can do for your clients in preparation. Print out and give them a sheet of signs of a cheating spouse. These have always been very helpful. A lot of times a client may approach you that is really not certain, but they have some suspicion. This is a good way to give them a little set of guidelines to find out if there are any of these things that they have noticed. A change in hygiene, a change in appearance. Is the person dressing different than they have in the past? Dressing younger than they normally would dress? Has there been a change in the relationship? Has there been a noticeable increase or lack of affection? Also, has the person been withdrawn, avoiding the eye contact, especially when first arriving home? Advance to the next slide. Continuing with signs of a cheating spouse, are they texting or on the cell phone more than usual? Or at odd times? Are they walking out onto the deck or outside the home to use their cell phone? Or to another room? Are they spending increased time away from home with friends or co-workers? Bills, especially cellular, are no longer arriving to the home or business address. They've either stopped paper billing from coming to the address or are having them sent to a different address or P.O. box. There's an unusual amount of time on the computer and the internet. Like I said before, social networking has changed everything now. More relationships are being started and ended online than ever before. Advance to the next slide. Continuing with signs of a cheating spouse, has he or she stopped receiving email at home? This could indicate that they have a new email address. They've suddenly purchased a new cell phone, especially prepaid cellulars or what we call throwaway phones. Are their texts and calls being regularly deleted from the cell phone? Would it be unusual to see them sitting there and deleting a text message immediately after they received it, where normally those things would be left to accumulate? Advance to the next slide. When dealing with surveillance, there are 3 steps for better surveillance. First, planning. What is the purpose of your surveillance? What is it that you're looking for? What are you trying to find? When would be the best time of the day or night for the surveillance? What's going to be the best type of vehicle to use? Gather all the information. Get all the intelligence you can up front. Also, check your equipment. Are batteries charged? If you're using cameras that require film, do you have film? Do you have extra batteries? Is your cell phone charged? Do you have binoculars? Make sure you've got all the equipment you need and that the equipment's in working order. Disguises and pretexts should be thought out well ahead of time, and make sure that these items are with you in case you need them. Also, what is your surveillance schedule going to be? Unless the client has tied you down to specific dates and times, then you need to decide on a surveillance schedule that fits the person's hours of most interest. In other words, times that they're off work, lunch times, the weekends. This all depends on what their habits are, what their hobbies are, what their work schedules are, and information that you've gotten from your client ahead of time. Advance to the next slide. Discussing basics for surveillance. Record the times and make entries often. Maintain some type of a log system, either a notebook and pencil or a tape recorder. A lot of times I like to just simply take a tape recorder with me and verbally put down and record the things that I want to remember later to document in a report. Record all activity. You can never tell what may be important later. Do not park your car facing the object of your surveillance. Your car has a face. Try to park parallel, or try to park the car to where you would actually be doing your surveillance from the back seat or out the back window. Of course, unless there's a possibility that you're going to need to leave rather quickly to tell a person. Do not smoke, or attempt not to smoke. Nothing can give you away quicker at night than a lit cigarette or smoke coming out the window of a parked car. Also, do not leave your engine running. Now, I know during the summertime it gets really hot, but there are small portable ice chest type coolers that are made for investigators to carry around in their vehicles. They plug into the cigarette lighter and they'll keep your car very cool and comfortable. They're inexpensive. Most of them are less than $100. Advance to the next slide. When following cars, keep in mind this is one of the hardest and most dangerous activities as a PI. Never follow too closely. Do not tailgate. It's going to get you noticed, and also it's going to increase chances of an accident. If possible, use a buffer vehicle between you and the person you're following. Your car should not be a Hummer or a bright red sports car. Drive something unassuming. You cannot break the traffic laws. When using two follow vehicles, switch out the lead follow vehicle occasionally, or as the situation permits. On multi-lane roads, drive in an opposite lane. For nighttime surveillance, study the taillight formation of the vehicle you're following. Advance to the next slide. When watching a person or persons at home or at a house or apartment, look for all signs of activities. Do you see lights turning off or on? Do you see the flicker of a television? Are there signs that this person's at home? Or are the signs indicating that no one is at home? Listen for sounds. Make sure they're at home. Look for changing light patterns. Plain view is okay. Using a super strong lens could be an invasion of privacy. Also remember, your license does not give you permission to trespass. Today's society is very concerned with security, so be careful when you're doing surveillance or watching a house or apartment. Use your props and gimmicks and pretexts and disguises to aid you in watching a person. Advance to the next slide. Also, when watching a person in public places, beware of public awareness. Certain places might be offensive to video or photograph. Say for instance at a funeral. Use covert camera equipment. But camcorders are an accepted part of society these days. Also, most all the new cell phones have video recording capabilities, and they're excellent to take into places like clubs or bars or any type of situation where you need to video covertly. Try to blend in. Do not act suspicious. Avoid parking in dark alleys or away from other cars. If you're doing surveillance in a parking lot, you're going to be more obvious if you park off in the parking lot alone, so that you're the only car in that section and you stick out like a sore thumb. Have your pretext ready. The worst time to be needing pretext is when something comes up and you're not ready. Do you notify the police or security that you're going to be doing surveillance at a particular location? This just depends on the area you're working. In your hometown, the police and the security people may know you. It may be perfectly alright for you to notify them that you're going to be there doing surveillance, especially late at night. But you may be in a location where you don't know these people, and you don't know whether or not they're related to any of the parties involved. You just have to make that decision based on the best information you have. Don't forget to continue to log your activities. Advance to the next slide. Also, in documenting the case, keep detailed logs. Take plenty of video and photographs. Document any improper conduct. Even if you weren't able to get a photo or a video, your document is admissible in court. Identify all the relationships. Who are these people that you've been videoing and photographing, and how are they related? Record and log all persons of interest. Record and log all suspicious vehicles. And get tag numbers. These can be ran later to determine who these people were. Advance to the next slide. Some resources that you can use are SIM card readers, SD card readers, video and photo software, spoof cards. And for those of you not familiar with a spoof card, this is simply a calling card that you can use if you need to. A lot of times people won't answer their phones when you block your number. So you can use a spoof card to place a call and have whatever phone number or information you want to show up on this person's caller ID to appear. You can simply do this. You can purchase these cards online through a lot of the spy shops for $29 to $35. Keystroke loggers, which you can place on a person's PC to record every keystroke that they have made to try and determine, what type of emails are being sent, what type of information is being shared. And also reverse cell number searches, or called a CNA. A lot of times there may be cell numbers of interest, and you can reverse search these through several databases to find out who the person is and their address. Advance to the next slide. Other resources are social networking sites such as Facebook, MySpace, MyLife, Bebo. You can find a lot of information on a person and their activities by what they're saying on their social networking sites, and almost everyone is on them. Spokeo, www.spokeo.com. This is an excellent site that has a lot of free functions where you can put in a name, or search by phone number, or search by email address, and it will give you an indication of what social networking sites this person is on. Also, it can give you some other vital information such as date of birth, address, and so forth. They also have a pay version, which is very inexpensive. It's only $49.95 per year, and it gets you into a lot of different areas of information. Excellent site for locating persons. Also, Google. Don't forget that Google search engine is powerful. You can Google a lot of information. You can Google a person's name, and you'll be surprised at the information that may come up about that person. Advance to the next slide. Let's deal just a moment with ethics. This is really very simple. Use good judgment before taking a case. Make sure you're taking the case for the right reasons, and make sure the person's wanting the job done for the right reasons. Is it a legitimate case? Keep the client's or the child's best interests at heart. Do not falsify a report. Do not exaggerate a situation. Advance to the next slide. When dealing with divorce and custody cases, you can be a great comfort to your client by providing a professional and an honest service. Bottom line, do the best job you can do it for the right reasons, provide your client with a timely report, and most of all, put their mind to ease and be a comfort to them by giving them the information that they need in a professional manner that can be used in court to aid them in coming out with the results that they deserve. Advance to the next slide. You have now concluded the class. It is time to take your exam. You can start your exam by clicking on the Take Exam link located just to the right of this slide. When you take your exam, please read and follow all the instructions. Complete the exam and go all the way to the end until you see the screen that says Processing and then the next screen which says Finished. This will ensure that your test results have been sent to NRTS Online and then transferred to the state so that you'll get credit for your continuing education. Thank you for attending NRTS Online.